I would like to now tell you of the video you will see. The video depicts testimony recorded for the occasion, for today, from a survivor from the terrible situation in South Sudan. It is a video that depicts sexual violence as a tactic of war in ethnic conflict. It depicts children born of wartime rape, and it depicts the lack of access to services and livelihood. May we show the video? Thank you.
I'm 36 years old and a mother of 6 children. I'm from South Sudan, Upper Nile State, Nasri. I am a survivor of sexual violence in July 2016. Those who sexually assaulted me were soldiers wearing a mix of military uniforms. Some were in camouflage uniform belonging to South Sudan Wildlife. Some were in green SPLA uniforms. They were carrying guns. The incident happened during the July 2016 crisis in Juba. We ran for our life and sought refuge in the UNIMIS protection of civilian site. We had no food and nothing to survive on. So a group of 8 women, including myself, decided to get outside the POC to collect firewood. While collecting firewood in the bush, a group of 7 SPLA soldiers attacked us and raped us. They loaded their guns and threatened to kill us. Some of us tried to run but did not succeed. We all had to sit down. The soldiers talked to us in Arabic and kept us at gunpoint. The 7 soldiers started taking 1 woman each to a bush and repeatedly raped us. The only woman that was not raped was one old woman among the 8 of us. We tried to see their faces to recognize them, but they covered their faces with clothes. They were so aggressive and they said they wanted to kill us. Because of the rape, the 2 women and myself became pregnant. As a result of the sexual assault, some of the victims developed gynecological complications and could not bear children. Some of these women still have problems of swollen stomach. The 3 of us with children born of rape have difficulties raising them with no fathers. We have nothing to feed and raise them with. We cannot afford to buy milk or any necessities. I would have wanted to join my children in a refugee camp in Ethiopia. But after my husband heard about the rape, he rejected me and he has blocked any communication with my children. I am a mother of 3 boys, 2 girls, plus this child born of rape. My children are informed of what happened to me and they have been told, your father rejected your mother. They are in constant fear of family disintegration. I am not allowed to call and to speak to them. I call for accountability of the perpetrators. These people need to be accountable for what they did to us, including their superiors and commanders. I know they are government soldiers. Us, the victims, need support. We are nobody now. We don't have education. We have been rejected since most of us are no longer welcomed by our husbands. No means of survival. No means for livelihood. I aspire to work and earn some income. My husband blames me for what happened, and I constantly feel shame. I am going to get old with access to only this child born out of rape. My life is just meaningless. My message to the Security Council is that people in South Sudan have been in crisis for more than 5 years now. Didn't you hear of all these issues that are happening to us, especially the women of South Sudan? I am here informing you that there are a lot of victims of sexual violence. Not only me, but a lot of women can testify. My appeal to the UN Security Council is this. We need immediate support for the victims of sexual violence. Support to hold the perpetrators accountable. Also put a tangible pressure so that the crisis is settled in a peaceful way. A lot of people are suffering, and some have mental problems. If I am still alive, I would like to testify in front of a court, be it in South Sudan or outside South Sudan. We are getting tired and exhausted because we speak about what happened to us, but there is no immediate help. People are talking about peace coming to South Sudan. In case the peace process collapses, sexual violence against women will happen again. Lack of peace will mean that all of us will die. We ask the Security Council to help us, the women. Look at this ration card. What I receive is not enough for me and my daughter to survive for a whole month. Some humanitarian agencies visited my tent and saw how I live. I live on the grace of neighbors who give food for me and my daughter. If I had not been raped, I would still have my dignity and continue to unite with my children.
Right. What can one say? It's riveting, and these are bold women. So I now would like to turn to more testimony from a survivor from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ms. Tatiana Bandalier Ukanire, who will discuss the links between economic security and physical security, meaning livelihood support and access to microcredit. Tatiana, you have the floor. You can stay at the podium. Stay there. Yeah, stay. Yeah, thank you.
Excellences, Mesdames.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and your various officers, I'm here today before you not just to speak personally, but to speak on behalf of thousands of people, women, girls, innocent children under the age of 5 years old, and even men who have experienced the tragedy that is sexual violence in my country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm very much aware that I've been able to find my voice when many people don't dare, and I'm here to speak for all of those people. We're now more than 20 years after the massacre of entirely innocent people, and we must be clear, in my country and around the world in conflict zones, we don't just die because of bullets or weapons. I can assure you that we're dying every day because of rape. Raping a person means killing them, even if they can still breathe. Sexual violence doesn't just destroy the body. Sexual violence takes root and destroys everything that it crosses. It has systematic consequences on the whole of the person, on a person's physical state, mental well-being, economic situation, and their role within their family and their community. We often hear that educating a woman is educating the whole nation. Have we also understood, however, that destroying a woman means destroying the whole community? When a woman is victim of sexual violence, when this affects their physical abilities, there is also an economic impact on her family and the community. And I can't talk about my country without telling you about some of the bitter realities in this country. I'd like to talk to you about Giselle, whose life has been a nightmare since she was first raped at the age of 13. She went to a wedding with her family in Bunyakiri, and when she went to get water from the river, her friends and her were raped. She said to me, "I was raped by so many men that I couldn't even count them all." Since then, she has experienced a paralysis. 1 month later, her family and her realized she was pregnant. A baby boy was born after the rape. 3 years later, Giselle was raped again, and she had a second child as a result of this rape. These are 2 of the thousands of innocent children who are not accepted by their communities. 3 weeks after that, when I was working as a member of SEMA, the Global Survivors Network, I met Florence, who was only 15 years old. Florence lives 20 kilometers away from Mikelai in the central Kasai. She was raped at the age of 12 by armed men who then killed her parents. And she's experiencing a double discrimination today. She can't study because of her poverty. And she's also overcome by a deep fear that never leaves her. She imagines that at any time she might be forced to turn to prostitution like many other girls of her age who are victims of these atrocities and have no options or means available to them. Florence and Giselle are just two examples amongst thousands of others. War is continuing to ravage our health and our communities. For 20 years now, we've been hearing promises to put an end to war, promises that victims will be recognized, promises that the perpetrators will be arrested and sentenced, the promises that children born of rape will receive support, promises that women will be able to get their dignity back and get back to their lives. But in your opinion, what do these victims really need? I can promise you that they're not looking for pity. What they need is for these promises to become reality. They need to be assured that these are not just fine words. If they remain just fine words, then this is an additional injury that will be inflicted on them. So I ask you, who can claim that they know what we need without listening to us? There aren't enough medical centres to provide post-rape assistance. The costs are too high for most victims. And just getting to the medical centre sometimes requires hours of walking through very dangerous areas. Survivors need to be able to rebuild. First of all, they need competent doctors who they can afford and also to receive psychosocial support and legal support. That's what a genuinely holistic approach means. Also, equally importantly, they have to be able to reintegrate into their societies. And that requires access to the right tools to ensure that they can become economically independent. For a survivor of sexual violence, economic security is a priority. After their physical security and psychological health have stabilized. Economic security will not be viable until survivors receive real support and a holistic approach that fits their needs. What kind of life are they going to live without a roof over their heads or without being able to meet the basic needs of their families? Now, that might seem obvious, finding economic activity, but if you're going to carry out any activity, you have to feel security. For me, physical security doesn't mean security for the individual, but for the community. And security is not part of day-to-day life for thousands of women and girls that I'm here representing today. And it's not part of my day-to-day life either. That's why I would urge the Congolese state to create some kind of justice mechanism that will be functional and effective, that will put an end to impunity and to break the cycle of violence that is doing so much damage to the whole of society. We still don't have that. And even when we have achieved justice, for example, in the case of the Kavumu children, these children and their families still haven't received compensation. I would also urge the creation of prevention programs targeted at the whole community, men, women, children, to change ideas about women's rights, to directly address toxic masculinity, and to break the taboos, which blame the victims instead of the perpetrators. We need programs to fight the stigma, and they need to take place in all institutions, schools, of course, but also with judges and lawyers, police, medical centres, to raise awareness amongst the people who are going to come into first contact with victims. And to member states, I would urge more widespread access to an effective compensation system, such as the Global Funds, which will be able to provide real support and access to activities that can help to generate income to ensure that survivors can become independent once again, and to become independent through compensation and to ensure that they have physical security. This will all help them heal and help their families and communities heal. If you don't listen to the voices of survivors and create convenient and sustainable solutions, then there will be no peace and there will be more and more new victims. Without justice, there will always be new victims and there will be no peace for survivors. It's been 10 years now since the international community created a UN mandate on sexual violence in conflict. It's time for promises made under this mandate to be translated into acts for Giselle, for Florence, and for so many others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. It's heartfelt. We would now like to hear from the testimony of a survivor from Iraq, Badria. Faisal Hassan Omar will discuss her perspective, both from the question of accountability as well as access to justice. Thank you.
I am Badria من Sinjar, from Sinjar. I am in New York to say that ISIS is weak. They took us prisoners. They oppressed us, and you cannot imagine the pain we went through. We are still here, so we are still strong. When I was a kid, I dreamed of becoming a doctor one day. This dream still exists. I am still dreaming of it. Nobody can stop me, not even ISIS. When I was 14, I was kidnapped by ISIS. I was separated from my family. Seven ISIS men shared me. ISIS took us prisoners. They tortured us. They prevented us from drinking and eating. They separated us from our families for 3 long years. The last person who had me was Moroccan. His wife was American. During this period, I saw massacres. I saw killings. I saw shelling. And I went to the hospital. I saw parts of corpses of men having been killed. This was the best day to see ISIS men being killed, because I felt that it is possible to be liberated. The American woman allowed me to go out and see what is happening. Through the neighbors, I learned how I can contact my uncle. That American wife gave us money to flee. When I saw my mom again for the first time, I cried. I told her, "Is this a dream, Mom? Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming, Mom? If this is a dream, I do not want to wake up. I am in a dream. I am in a dream while some people are still living in the nightmare of ISIS. Some of them are from my family. My brother, my sister, and my father. My sister is in a camp, and we cannot get her back because there's no protection. Those criminals were not held accountable. This is very hurtful. I described their faces. I gave their names. I gave their names to the Committee on the Crimes of ISIS, but they were not prosecuted. When I go to Mosul, I feel great fear. I feel that these people are still present. It is not right. Isn't it right to have these people prosecuted? Isn't it right for people who saw oppression to see those people prosecuted and held accountable? My city was destroyed. There are no services. The services provided are from NGOs and organizations. If these organizations disappear, they will no longer have services on the ground. Our buildings were destroyed. Nobody built them again. Many people are now living in camps. These people, if they want to build their homes, if they want to build Sinjar again, they want to go back because they do not want to live in camps and tents. At least they can bring life back to my city. At least my family would go back. At least my city would be built. At least criminals would be held accountable. This is the least we can do to provide justice.
Badira, you have incredible strength. Can I have another stand up or a round, please? Thank you. And thank you. What you have done is very important. You're an incredibly courageous young woman. We now turn to another survivor from Mali, Bintou Foné Samake, who is delivering her statement on behalf of Fatoumata Cissé, a survivor from Mali. The idea here is to focus on violent extremism, sexual violence as a tactic in terrorism.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in all of your various ranks and titles, all protocol observed. It is with great bitterness that I address this august assembly today to transmit to you the voice of victims from sexual violence in Mali and to deliver the testimony of one of those in particular. Our ardent wish would have been that today this victim would be able to be here to tell you her story herself. But unfortunately, that victim did not have access to this rare manner in the form of an American visa. And today she was asked to provide guarantees. What guarantees can this poor woman give on top of those provided by the United Nations system? Now she is asking many questions that I am not able to answer. The questions that she is asking me and that I am unable to answer include: do the Americans not believe that I was raped? Are they hand in glove with our rapists? I gave all of the information I could to provide to get that visa. Are they going to give all of that information to the rapists? I am extremely afraid. One thing is certain. I know that she is not currently in a stable condition. The testimony that I am going to deliver is on behalf of Fatoumata Cissé. She says, I am 31 years old. I was born in Tombouctou region. I am the mother of 5 children. I am a Fulani mother. The 2005 crisis began when I was in Timbuktu. The jihadists came to where we were one day, where I lived with my husband and my children. We were abducted. The jihadists wanted to know where my husband was because he was a teacher. He had hid himself in the house because he was very afraid. He took advantage of a lapse in the jihadists' attention to climb the wall of our building and flee. Since that moment, I have not heard hide nor hair of him. Now alone with my children, I decided to return to Bamako to seek refuge with my sister. I took the bus. The day that I left, there were a lot of passengers on that bus. It was between 2 towns that our bus was attacked by jihadists in April 2012. They told everyone to get off the bus, all of the passengers. The men had their hands bound and they were taken far away under armed escort. And nobody has heard of them since then. The women were divided up among the different jihadist groups that had attacked the bus. I had a 4-month-old boy with me. They took him away. The jihadists then forced me into a vehicle accompanied by 2 motorcycles and took me to their base in the middle of the bush. I begged them with all of my strength to allow me to leave and find my child. They didn't let me. I was given to a jihadist who seemed to be the leader. He bound my feet, and I was held there for 2 weeks in the jihadist leader's tent, who raped me during that entire time. I was his sexual slave. After 15 days, they took me to the outskirts of the town of Gunam, gave me 15,000 francs to seek treatment. During the time I was in captivity, I noticed that the jihadist group prayed whenever a prayer was due, and they released my bindings as well so that I could pray with them. They spoke a dialect that I did not understand, and they communicated with me in French. Some of them spoke Tamashek, which I do understand. Often, the jihadists brought in women who were only 2 or 3, and they were also raped and then released. On the 5th of January 2013, a little boy was born out of that rape. I did not want him. I hated him with all of the strength I had, and I refused to breastfeed him. I had tried traditional methods of abortion to end the pregnancy unsuccessfully. The boy was born in Bamako. I had managed by then to seek refuge with my sister. A kind person, a pastor, learned about my child's existence and agreed to take the child in to educate him. He rebaptized the child Jérôme. I'm a Muslim, and yet my son was baptized Jérôme. I was able to bear all of this pain, and this frustration, this suffering, and this hatred of life thanks to the support of a women's NGO, the Wildaf Mali, and the support of this pastor who wanted very much to take my child in. I was given legal, material, and psychological support. I now feel very bad in my own skin. I still suffer from nightmares and heart palpitations. All of the things that I have been prescribed aren't working. I submitted a complaint through the Wildaf Mali because I want justice to be done, because I have suffered so much. I wanted to ask you if you could to follow this procedure and produce this procedure for access to justice for victims of sexual violence. Bring safety and security to our roads, because many women are no longer able to move about in safety, and they are raped and continue to be raped. Women are living with shame. Support reintegration activities from NGOs by granting professional vocational training subsidies for victims so that they can get training to support their socioeconomic reintegration. Strengthen the psychological health rehabilitation of victims, and provide shelters for victims so that they can emerge from the suffering they face living with many other people. My children's father is still missing. I am trading here and there to survive, and I also rely on the charity of charitable organizations and my sponsors. What I want to do now is to get treatment and to be trained to work in a kindergarten. I have a lot of children, and I want to devote the rest of my life to them. Thank you.
Tatiana, Badra, Bintu, you are very brave people, and you make the world a better place. We have a video now of a survivor from the Central African Republic to look at challenges in assessing holistic services, including reproductive and maternal health care, HIV prevention, and response. The video, please.
Mesdames et messieurs, c'est un honneur.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to take the floor before this august assembly to briefly tell you about my personal experiences in my own flesh, in my own skin, since the painful events that took place in my country, the Central African Republic. I was at the time a trader buying merchandise in Brazzaville and then selling it in my country, the CAR, above all in the provinces. On the 4th of January 2018, I was in Kembe, a provincial town 620 kilometers from the capital, when the anti-Balaka armed groups launched an assault at 10 p.m. on the town, which was already under the control of the Seleka rebel faction. Once they had won, the anti-Balaka deported many members of the population to their camps, and I was among those people. Once in those camps, all of the women and girls were raped and held in captivity. I suffered sexual violence for 4 months, and I then managed to flee from the camp and reach Bangassou on foot after having covered 130 kilometers, after having lost my home and my property along with other women. Deeply traumatized by my experience and stigmatization, I managed to join a MINUSCA convoy and reach Bangui. Once there, the NGO Les Flamboyants referred me to Médecins Sans Frontières to receive medical care. Thank the Lord I had not been infected in spite of all of the sexual abuse that I had suffered at the hands of these executioners. Thanks to this NGO, Les Flamboyants, who ensured that I got psychosocial care and other assistance, I managed to recover hope in life, and I was able to brave the shame to speak out in public. If it had not been for this awareness raising, the support and all of the assistance I received from this religious platform that gave myself and my sisters, victims, a message of hope, I would not and we would not have managed to hang on this long. I would like to take this opportunity to advocate for the victims of sexual violence in the CAR. Most of them contract infections following violence, and others don't receive assistance. I shout out in distress to the international community and the participants of this meeting. The consequences of sexual violence is a disaster for our Central African nation. Allow me to draw your kind attention to the case of my country, which has the world record for the worst coverage of health infrastructure, which is a circumstance that makes the fight against HIV/AIDS all the harder, which incidentally has a prevalence rate of 3%. This crisis stands out from the other many military and political crises in my country in that rape has never been used as a weapon of war, and as well the things that go along with it, AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases, and sexual violence has never reached such a degree of barbarity, regardless of age, socio-professional category, or social status. I regret that I was not able to be with you today to bear a sad but real witness to what I personally suffered, but also the horrors and various traumas that my sisters in the Central African Republic are still experiencing today. I spare at the moment a sad thought for the women and men in the provinces of the Central African Republic outside the capital Bangui, because they do not have the preventive means that they need, including the early screening and appropriate care. HIV care faces many challenges. The main one of them is the availability of resources. Only the Global Fund to fight HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria has available resources that cover 38% of those who need antiretroviral treatment. That gap needs to be filled. Awareness-raising campaigns has helped to increase the number of beneficiaries, but without an increase in antiretrovirals. The Global Fund has suspended its purchase of screening tests for HIV, resulting in the closing of screening centres for HIV/AIDS. If there is a breakdown in the supply of antiretrovirals, then victims of sexual violence will be highly exposed, which leads me today to make a sincere appeal to you today to make the largest possible number of kits available as quickly as possible. Although the President of the Republic has signed a decree on targeted free healthcare for pregnant women, breastfeeding women, victims of gender-based sexual violence, and children under 5, this program still needs to be effectively implemented. Currently, some partners have been able to ensure the health coverage of 24 out of a total of 31 districts. We underscore that the Health Department has set up a pilot project for holistic care based in one of the hospitals in Bangui, in this case l'Hôpital de l'Amitié, based on the Congolese model of Panzi, with Dr. Mukwege in partnership with the Pierre Fabre Foundation, financed by the French Development Agency. Unfortunately, to this date, this project is still not operational, and the victims are facing each day in desperation. And when we speak of the victims, they suffer twice over. Not only are those who brutalize them free, but they also continue to know that thousands of young girls and women are raped each day. The Truth, Justice, Reparation and Reconciliation Committee has been set up, but that is only modest progress at a time when the law on the criminalization of the intentional transmission of HIV/AIDS must be made much more strict. The criminal court has not sent a strong signal to us, the victims, and the Special Criminal Court in the Central African Republic is not yet fully operational. What will become of us, the victims, ladies and gentlemen? Our feeling in the face of what could be a flagrant, glaring injustice is one of great pain. These brief reflections from me demonstrate the despair of victims in the Central African Republic, as well as the messages that I transmit to you, which are the following. They want the member states, including the Central African Republic, my country, to establish an appropriate mechanism and put pressure on governments so that the various different types of assistance through UNAIDS, for example, can actually and effectively reach the victims. They want all of the projects that have been set up to help them don't remain simply a dead letter, but that they become a reality as quickly as possible. They think that only solidarity among victims of sexual violence can further drive forward our struggle in all its dimensions. I beg you to help the government and the NGOs such as Les Flamboyants, which are helping and protecting victims with a full range of support. You will, in doing so, have helped to save lives. To conclude, let us not be divided, let us be united. Our struggle must be known to combat violence and to avoid the loss of our dignity. Thank you.